These are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to another webinar brought to you by Hennepin Marketing, and this time our very valued partner Quizio. So I am Jeff Allen, and on the line I also have Mark from Quizio, who I think is usually traveling all over the world, but he might actually be presenting from his home base in Montreal, one of my favorite cities, with us today. So we're going to be talking about, are your PPC leads falling through the cracks, specifically with PPC and B2B. So I said we have Mark on the line. Why don't you say hello, Mark?
Oh, hello, everybody.
So Mark wanted to make sure that I pointed out that he is a master fisherman. I don't know if that means that he's a master of exaggerating the size of fish he catches, but
Hey,
I'll have to ask.
whoa. No.
And he's also the EVP and co-founder of Quizio with 17 years of digital marketing experience. I won't talk about myself too much because you'll get tired of my nasally voice by the end of this, but I always like to point out that I am a drinker and appreciator of fine single malt Scotch whiskey. So anyone out there that feels like buying me a nice present, you now have some pretty good ideas. The topic today is going to be on B2B for pay-per-click advertisers. And really there's two primary problems that most B2B advertisers face, and that's lead quantity and lead quality. So we're going to break those down. I'm going to speak about quantity, and Mark, for the most part, is going to speak about quality. So we'll talk about why you need to find more leads, where to find them, and then what to actually do with them once you do generate them. First, we're going to jump into a live poll question. This helps Mark and I tailor our presentation to people in the audience. Specifically for this question, how long have you been in PPC? So if you guys could all take a minute and answer this poll for us. Your options are less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and 5+ years. So Mark, I know your profile said that you've been doing this for 17 years, so I think you must have started with Alta Vista or AOL.
No. 17 years in digital marketing doesn't mean 17 years managing paid search. Not the same thing. Not the same thing. But yeah, I started a while ago.
Very fair point. I have the same thing. I've been doing it since 2000, but PPC more for the last 7 or 8 years. So we have the poll answers in. It looks like 1 to 3 years is kind of the skew of the audience. So certainly a lot of people with some experience. So we won't want to necessarily focus too much on the basics. Make sure we kind of tailor to them. So thank you for that. And we have a second question. So how do you manage your accounts? Again, this helps us get an idea of who we're speaking to. So your options are: I manage it myself, I'm part of a team that manages it, I outsource my account management to an agency or something like that, and I'm rethinking how my account is managed. So how that falls in. And Mark, I know with the Quizio you guys deal mostly with agencies, or is it exclusively at this point?
No, it used to be exclusively agencies, and I think over the years our value propositions changed. So we still have, a lot of our focus is around helping agencies be more successful, but we do have some advertisers as well. It's typically very large with very complex account structures.
That makes perfect sense. So the results coming in, we have 39% at I manage it myself, and 58% I'm part of a team that manages it. So again, that tells us probably we have some kind of large, complex accounts like you're talking about, Mark, that require more than one person to manage it. So make sure we keep that in mind. So also we have a hashtag for the webinar today is ThinkPPC. So we will have some time for live Q&A at the end. You can tweet those at us using that hashtag, and we'll monitor that and get to those questions at the end. Or you can do it through the go-to live chat box as well. We'll monitor those too, and like I said, leave probably 20 minutes or so at the end to answer those questions as they come up. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to talk primarily about what you're seeing in this graph here, which is when it comes to B2B marketing, the issue is typically finding volume, specifically when it comes to pay-per-click. So in this chart, I'm graphing using Google Trends, two pretty simple things to compare, on the term online education and the term marketing software. And you can see that even towards the end, even though towards the end the lines start to converge a little bit, on average, online education volumes about 3 times that of what's out there for marketing software. And obviously, you can compare this and slice it and dice it a lot of different ways. But the thing to illustrate it and to take away from this is it's generally a lot harder to find specifically search volume for B2B. And making that maybe even a little bit more painful for B2B marketers is that cost per click goes up significantly with that over time. So this shows you that even though impressions may be going up a bit, even though even though impressions are going up a bit, clicks are actually staying the same, and that's primarily because competition's increasing. So more and more B2B marketers are saying, hey, this PPC thing seems to work out for our competitors or for other companies like ours. And so they're jumping into the marketplace. And as they're doing that, it's becoming harder and harder to win. It's becoming harder to win at auction. So CPCs are going up as more competitors jump in. And cost per click's going up as well. And then click-through rate's going down. So it's kind of the worst thing you want to see when you have a PPC account or you're a PPC manager. And I'm sure probably why a lot of people have joined us today for a B2B marketing webinar, because it's really an incline in CPCs and generally a steadier decline in clicks. So when we talk about volume being important, part of the reason why volume is more important in B2B and cost per click maybe a little less concerning is typically the average order value for a B2B sale is drastically higher than B2C. So if you're targeting e-commerce accounts, or if you're an e-commerce targeting consumers, you might have an average order value of $10, $50, $100, on the high end, $300, $400, $500, probably at the very high end of that. But when you're talking about enterprise, B2B, you have a much higher order value. So this is a screenshot just from Salesforce, pretty well known, obviously. And on the lower end, they have $3,000 per user for an annual agreement, right? So that's obviously, even if you have a $300 average order value for e-commerce, 10 times higher. So even though it's getting more expensive to compete, usually the return on ad spend, the return on investment in PPC is still well worth it. So again, instead of worrying about lowering costs and lowering cost per click, most B2B marketers I find, or companies we work with, we find that they're still okay with the escalating cost to a degree. They're really just trying to find more sales any way they can. So that's why Mark is going to talk about why lead strategies are important and why it's important to actually not just worry about the leads coming in, but worry about the quality of leads, because there's fewer of them. You got to make more use of them. That's why I'm going to talk specifically about why finding volume is what matters. And I do look exactly like Don Draper, no matter what Mark says. So where do we find volume when it comes to pay-per-click? So the next little part here, I'm going to talk about ad extensions and how to use those to drive additional volume. Display networks inside and outside of GDN. Facebook, is that good to B2B? I'll talk about that a little bit, the success we've seen. And using LinkedIn, which I think a lot of B2B people are using, but if you're not, is absolutely a very valuable tool for driving your volume of B2B leads. And before I do that, because search, no matter how you slice and dice it, my experience is anyway, that search leads, because of their intent, tend to convert best. And so I find that it's definitely worth a quick look at, are you doing everything you can in your search campaigns to get as much volume as you can? So 4 quick tips for doing that. One, versus a lot of other types of accounts like e-commerce, where you may not want to have a lot of keywords in your account that never generate traffic, so have low search volume. I found in B2B, because there's oftentimes news stories that end up driving volume, it happens to work better if you have a lot of long tail keywords in your account, even if they don't currently get volume, because if a news story breaks and it triggers one of those keywords, it could skyrocket overnight. And the risk is, if you get there 3 hours too late, you might have already be past the news cycle, and you're only going to get the tail end of that traffic. So you got to think through what kind of news stories may break around your product or service that would get really large attention, that you would want those keywords in the account and to leave there, even if they're not currently getting volume. The other, so number 2 on my list of getting more from search leads is to create a keyword list that target people who search for your client's name plus what you do. So might sound a little complicated, but what it basically means, if someone was looking for, if our web designer wanted to get some extra traffic, they might look for who designed Hennepin Marketing's website, right? So they're looking for something that intrigues them. They maybe saw our site and thought it was really nice. Hopefully they did. And so they might be saying, well, I wonder who did that. Maybe I can hire them to do my site. So there's not going to be large volume, but it's going to be very, very high intent and very quality traffic that's there. So you got to think through maybe who some of your clients are, who may get a lot of traffic to their site, and what would people be searching for in regards to, who does this for them. So what CRM do they use, or what marketing software does so-and-so use? Kind of give you, again, high quality traffic, maybe not necessarily the volume. The third option is to develop comparison pages that make it so you can target more general terms. So a lot of terms about, to start with how do you do something, or why would you use, so marketing software, for example, are really top of the funnel search queries that a lot of people find, if you're just looking at the clicks on that search query to the leads generated from that search query, aren't necessarily very profitable. They don't have a high conversion rate. So one option is to create these landing pages or pages that are comparison tables or explanations of why you would choose a certain marketing software and compare it to competition, so it becomes a useful tool for them in their research phase. And then use attribution to understand down the funnel, do you actually start seeing those conversions come in later through brand terms or something like that. And then the last quick tip for getting more out of search and really all your traffic is to do 5 rounds of CRO tests. So 5 rounds of testing your landing page with the attempt of increasing your conversion rate. So I think we probably all do some sort of CRO, but the reason I very explicitly state 5 is because we at Hennepin have done a lot of testing on CRO. We do it for a lot of our clients, and we have found that, of course, some tests are going to win, some tests are going to lose. And what happens is some people do 2 or 3 tests, and 2 or 3 tests lose, they get frustrated and give up. Or they do 1 test and it does reasonably better, and so they stick with that new version and move on. But we found if you do 5 rounds, the good will generally outweigh the bad to the tune of a 25% increase in conversion rate. That's our average. That's what we found from measuring our results, and it's held fairly consistent for any client we've done it for. So it's not just 1 round of CRO test, at least 5, and at that point you get ready to a higher conversion rate overall. So really quick on this one, this is ad extensions. There's several very valuable B2B ad extensions that I want to highlight specifically. I'll jump to the very bottom, the light orange one. I made it light because app extensions is a very cool tool for those companies that do have apps. Make it really easy for people to connect that way if that's the way that they prefer to consume your content. But not everyone does, right? So it's easy to say, it's really cool, it sounds really fun, but not everyone can do it. But the ones that people can do, location extensions, call extensions, and site links extensions, are extremely valuable ways to get additional clicks because they offer so it's site links, different features and benefits that users may be looking for specifically that would entice them to come to your site. But beyond that, what I found the most value from them is it increases your SERP real estate. So when you start adding location extensions, call extensions, and you show for site link extensions with your ad, you actually, based on what we've seen, can take up to 25% more real estate than your competitors' ads if they're not using all those features. So there's benefits of driving calls and showing people where your location is and you're near to them, and using site links to help them navigate to more interesting places on your site. But the reality is, part of it is just eating up more real estate on the SERP page. GDN is something we have found particularly useful for B2B clients. So a couple quick tips that we've seen a lot of good results from are, first, use remarketing list duration to target users during a long sales cycle. So a quick tip for that is just making sure the default's usually 30 days. If your sales cycle is a year, which sometimes in B2B it can be, you're probably going to want to make sure you extend that out so that you're in front of them during the awareness and consideration cycles. The other kind of clever thing you can do with remarketing is if you know your industry well, which I assume you do, you probably know the typical contract length. So we know for our clients and our business and the ones we're targeting, it's typically 1 year. Most of our clients come in with a 1-year agreement. So if we go up against a client, I might be giving too much secrets away here, but if we're going with, we're bidding on a client with 2 or 3 other agencies, let's say we lose the business, well, we might create a remarketing list that will let us start targeting them about 10 months from now when their contract may be coming up and then maybe reconsidering who they're working with. So again, just to get in front of them at the point where they're starting to get awareness and consideration again. Another step that we've seen a lot of success with is targeting managed placements that indicate the research phase. So if you know of websites that people use to research your company, it makes a lot of sense to bid on them specifically so that you're targeting those people who are just kind of in the awareness consideration phase, trying to figure out who to go with, so you can be right up in front of them while they're making that decision. And then lastly, using multi-channel funnels or more sophisticated attribution modeling to determine the impact of brand search querying following display impressions. So what we've noticed more times than not, what happens is when we get invested heavily in display on GDN, we see a large lift in brand search queries, which, as we all know, tend to convert the best, and so also a lift in branded conversions. It'd be really easy just to think that maybe something else is going on driving that extra brand traffic. So you do want to make sure that you do some incrementality testing and everything like that. But we found more times than not, investing heavily in GDN does drive brand conversions. And then when it comes to display, you can't forget that there's a whole world out there beyond just GDN. So in my experience, GDN's pretty easy to work with. I get good results from it and everything like that. But you can see on this graph, it's only a tiny slice of the overall inventory that's out there. You have Facebook, Yahoo, Microsoft, AOL, and all kinds of other ad exchanges out there that have a lot of inventory that is just as good as Google that you can get at, that if you're only focusing on the GDN, you're ignoring. So some certainly to consider investing in other display networks as you're building out that strategy. So now we're going to let me take a break for a second and let you guys do a little bit of the work. So we have another live poll question. It's number 3 of, I believe, 5 in the webinar today. So this one is, do you use display to drive B2B leads? So yes, but quality is poor, which certainly can happen. No, because quality is poor or other reason. Yes, and I love it. And no, but I'm going to start. So why these people are taking this and giving us some feedback here. Mark, what's your answer to this question?
I find that display can be tricky with B2B leads. Honestly, it's a good tool if you're just trying to generate white paper downloads or sort of prospect type leads that are not as qualified. But the tricky part is to evaluate them. But the good news is I'm going to talk about that in my presentation, about how a long sales cycle combined with all of the other problems we have with B2B mean that you need to be really careful about how you evaluate leads.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fair point. I think when it comes to display, the call to action, the offer certainly matters even more. Of course, it always does, but matters even more than search. So the responses come in. 30% do use display, but quality is poor. 22% don't use it because it's poor or another reason. But 15% of people out there say yes and that they love it. So again, thank you for participating and give us that feedback. So Facebook for B2B, this is something that I think a lot of people have experimented with, and I would call experimented with the old way of Facebook, and it didn't work. It didn't work for us. It didn't work for a lot of our clients, B2B or B2C, for a really long time until traffic and advertising options have got a little better and a little easier to use. So one example of that is a new feature called lookalike campaigns, relatively new feature anyway. And these lookalike campaigns can create leads at half the cost and about 50% of the inventory of Google. So again, 50% of the inventory, it's not that it's gonna take over your Google budget or the amount of leads you're driving through Google, but it's a very, very nice supplement, and we've seen more so than Bing or other options out there, even though I do love Bing, and got to make sure you're in Bing and Google. But even though, but Facebook lookalike campaigns we found can drive more volume. So it's really simple. We're going to put this slide deck on PPC Hero, so you will have access to this page. But it's really easy to create a lookalike audience. If you want to just find these instructions, you can go to facebook.com/help and just search lookalike. It will take you straight here. But what in basic you do is you take your target leads that are already in your database. So you can segment them by, these are the very best leads. Maybe they're the highest order value for you, or they've been the longest term clients, or they've been the easiest to work with, or the most fun, or whatever it is. You take a large section of those, at least 500, but the more the better. And you can upload their email address to Facebook, and Facebook will be able to composite based on that. So they will say, okay, so these are the people you're going after. We'll do all some kind of black magic in the background, and we'll create a similar audience to that now you can target over on top of every other way you can target on Facebook. So you can target that audience plus the keywords they're looking for. In their region, they're looking for it, and all those kinds of things. So it's a really simple way to basically create a similar audience to what you're already targeting, what your best clients already are, and have a lot of volume out there. Like I said, about half the leads you're generating in Google, you'll be able to generate through this. And I think over time, it will expand even beyond that. We've seen some really good growth in the last few months in this feature. And last, for my part of driving increasing quantity of B2B leads is LinkedIn. So I think probably the basics of LinkedIn are pretty well covered. But one thing that you may want to consider is targeting the specific position at the specific company that your salesperson is currently working on, and or the demographics of your ideal client, so that the position and the company of your ideal client. But the reason why I say that the specific position and the company that your sales team is working on is, first, you'll be a hero to your salespeople, right? So they're going to be calling these people, they're going to say, I'm seeing your ad all over on LinkedIn, and they're going to think you're investing heavily, but really you're targeting to them. But you can also target specifically to them the offers you're talking about. So obviously if you're talking about, in our case, conversion rate optimization or CRO versus pushing general PPC account management versus audits, if we might be talking to our clients about those specific things, we obviously would want to show them different ads. And by targeting them specifically by the company and the position, we're able to do that. Mark and I were talking about this the other day, and he said they have something like 30 quadrillion leads, and so it would take them quite a while to be able to figure that out. And yes, it would take a long time doing it at that point. So for us, when we do it at this granular as a level, we're really going to focus on maybe the top 100 prospects that we really want to target, that are really deep in our funnel, that we want to make sure we aid the sales process with. So, and really quick tips, what we found works best on LinkedIn are white papers, toolkits, and articles. So just contact us, or even more so, here's our price, pay us and sign up online. Offers on LinkedIn tend not to work as best as kind of scholarly papers written to help them do better at their current role. They love that, they download it, and it also helps show, demonstrate some expertise to them in their specific area. And that is, luckily for you guys, it for my portion. So at this time, Mark is actually going to take over as presenter, and he is going to start by asking you guys the next poll question.
Yeah, so just bear with me as we transition screens. I hope this is going to work out well. Just a moment. And let's see if I do this. All right. So thanks, Jeff. Great presentation. This certainly some really good tips to increase volume. And I already know that my own marketing team was taking notes. I can see them from here. So good stuff. Good stuff. So here's the live poll question. Do you use marketing automation, lead scoring, or lead nurturing technology such as Marketo or Eloqua or Pardot or Pardo? I'm not sure how they pronounce it, but the choices are yes, I do, I don't know, or no, I do not. It'll take a few seconds for the results to come up.
So I know our sales team specifically loves lead scoring tools. So I know internally we've both used kind of plug and play options that are out there, but also spent a lot of time figuring out what the right score for our leads are and everything like that. So even though it takes a long time, I know that they've absolutely loved it, and it's made a big difference in the number of leads they've been able to convert because they spend their time with their most valuable opportunities.
Yeah, and it's the same for us. All right, so just to kick things off on my end, I think if you guys are probably all B2B marketers, or you have to deal with some B2B clients, and you'll find that it's quite different from just your typical B2C campaign for many different reasons. I think it's really hard work. It's like a giant maze. You don't know where to go, where you're going, for many different reasons. I think we're going to go over some of that, try to bring a little bit more order to the chaos, and give you some tips on how you can evaluate the leads that come in and use them for improvement in a timely manner. So in most situations, B2B, it's not just about marketing and you're done. There's, you're marketing with the goal of helping a sales team. This is a famous scene from Glenn Ross movie where Jack Lemmon is a salesperson, and he's being blamed for the lack of success of the company. And what does he do? He says, the leads are weak. So the marketing department, in this case, I guess Alec Baldwin, although he's not a marketer, but is not generating good leads. We don't have what it takes to be successful. So that's the issue. It's generating lots of leads is a big issue, but also getting quality leads is tricky. And working with the sales department to make them successful is our job. And in most cases, the sales team has probably more power than the marketing department. So it's important that you serve them well, or else, we all know what waits for someone that's not helping the company. You get fired. So we don't want that. So I think there's 5 big issues, and some of them were covered by Jeff with B2B that make it difficult to manage PPC campaigns effectively. And one of them is certainly the length of most sales cycles in B2B, which can last from months to years before a lead turns into revenue. Another issue with having a long sales cycle is that a lot of things happen over time. So you start a campaign on day 1. After 1 year, it turns into revenue. Like you got a lead and it turns into revenue. A lot of things happen since then. That campaign is not the same. So the conclusions you draw after 1 year may no longer be valid, right? Because you've changed your approach, you've changed your targeting, you have new ads up there, new landing pages, new offers. So it's really tricky when you're in that situation to sort of bring back the results, your ROI, and to be really confident that it applies to your new initiatives, which you're deploying at that time. So learning what works takes such a long time, and optimization takes such a long time that it puts us in a really different situation than the B2C marketer would be in. The second issue that I find is the lack of volume. It's a very low flow proposition. In B2B is typically highly specialized vertical niches, where the volume of queries on search, the valid queries, are fairly small. The audience is small. That's why there's not that many queries. And because of that, in statistics, we have something called the law of large numbers, and it's hard to apply that in this case, and to get a significant enough amount of data in a timely manner to make decisions is really tricky, because as we saw, it takes forever to know whether or not a conversion you got is actually a good conversion. Is it going to be turning into dollars down the line? Typically, we don't have that information for a long time. So, running proper statistic models on B2B campaigns can be tricky. Yet a third issue, I would say, and this is, by the way, the most expensive coin on earth, it's a $10 million coin, is that we have really high value sales, high ticket items. like Jeff mentioned. It's in cases like in many cases, you're talking about millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's really valuable. But because it takes so long to take the lead through the entire process it needs to go through, it's tricky to be really confident and know for sure that it's okay to spend like $5,000 per conversion. I'm slightly exaggerating, but I've seen things like that. So it's really hard because your CMO is going to come down on you, or your CEO. Someone's going to say, "This is insane. You know, we can't sustain this." So how do we reconciliate really high value ticket like sales with limited marketing budgets? Because in fact, you know, it's not really likely that you're going to be allowed to spend that much money per lead. Even though, you know, we all know it in theory it makes sense. In reality, not too many business administrators are willing to take that risk and let you spend that kind of money. So it's hard to judge lead value, you know, because the sales cycle is so long and we have such a low flow. The fourth consideration for me, and it's also true for B2C to some extent, is that there are multiple touch points. So before someone converts, you know, we know that many things can happen, and they can be exposed to display ads, and they can click on a search ad, for example. But, you know, a lot of times there's only one. So a lot of times you'll see one search query with nothing else. So that's a problem, but it's, you know, it's somewhat contained. In B2B, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because the minute you've converted someone, the marketing department goes to work. Like, I mean, we do work before we get the convert, but we're still working after. And now it's this is why I asked if you guys use marketing automation, because it's typical. B2B marketers would use that. You start nurturing your leads. You start, you know, you have content programs, and you'll deploy specific content to specific audiences, and it's like drip marketing, for example, can be applied. Also, you have your sales team that's going to start calling on all these leads and try to, you know, make some inroads and to try to close them. So a lot of things happen. You may meet them at events and everything else. So I know for a fact, you know, just looking at our own database, any given client that we have, when we look at where they came from, it's never simple. It's never 2 or 3 things. It's always dozens of touch points and phone calls and emails. And so which ones of these were more important? Applying credit to that is really tricky. And by the way, I don't have a solution for that. I know it's a problem, and you know, we do our best to deal with it. But it's part of the complexity of B2B marketing. Fifth and you know, last for me is it's tricky to evaluate lifetime value in B2B, and of course there's different you know, different applications for that, and sometimes it's easy, there's just one sale, but typically what we see in B2B are a business relationship where then you start selling stuff, right? So it could be, in our case, it's recurring revenue, a monthly fee, but it could be various contracts, you know, and maybe maintenance contracts and things like that, and you don't know how long for sure a customer is going to stay with you, but what you do know is that they're constantly reordering and things like that. So that value continues to grow, and when you're starting your marketing program and you don't have 10 years of expertise and you don't know how much a customer is worth until you've lived it. So it's tricky to know that for sure, you know, like what's the recurring revenue going to amount to, what's your lifetime value going to be, considering all the fluctuations in monthly recurring revenue and the duration of the contract that you may have signed. So to summarize the problem, B2B sales rely on marketing providing a good flow of well-qualified leads, right? But the sales cycle is long. We have a low flow of queries, so it's tricky to have statistical significance with anything we do. The leads are really expensive, but they're not all worth the same thing at all. I think Jeff touched on that with the display, but it could be for any reason. A lead is not a lead. You know, there's all kinds of things that come through. So we need to be able to evaluate these things well. Attribution is even more complicated than in B2C, and lifetime value also is really hard to capture. So then, considering all this, how do we get, you know, a nice pile, a continuous flow, I guess, of great leads in the hands of our sales teams? The first step to doing that, we found, is to understand your own waterfall, to understand how, for your organization, a lead or a conversion becomes a lead, becomes whatever. So in our case, and we'll go through our waterfall in just a minute, but you know, you have your conversion, which then gets maybe deduped by some system. It may get qualified by a system like Marketo or Eloqua with some scoring. Then it needs to be processed by a salesperson, so maybe it gets accepted by the sales team and they start working on it. Eventually, their effort turns into an opportunity, and the opportunity turns into revenue. So all of these things happened after the conversion, you know, and so you need to keep track of these things if you want to hope to steer your campaign in the right direction. So what we did here, you know, because we come into this problem, well, early on, and we're obviously by definition active in PPC, and we depend on generating a good volume of B2B leads to be successful, is that we decided to work out some proxies to determine lead value, which means we decided not to wait you know, months or years until we close a deal to decide whether or not that click was good. We get that information like right away, and there's two steps to that. The first step is to in your forms, your lead capture forms, you need to make sure that the information you ask is relevant, and that you use that information as quickly as possible and feed it back into your PPC campaign so you can make decisions. So in our case, some of the indicators we may look at are, is this an agency or an advertiser? And by the way, we leave the form fields optional. So we don't force people to fill out anything except for maybe the email address. Everything else is optional, because we know it means something if someone doesn't want to tell you what their phone number is, right? We know that they don't want to be contacted by sales. So that's fine, but it's not the same kind of lead as someone who gives you all the information you want. So for example, we ask them, how much ad spend do you manage? We look at whether they gave us a Gmail address or something like that, like a free email address or a corporate email. Did they provide a phone number? Did they provide their company name? A lot of people don't do that. We match company names with Zoom Info, I think, or Dun & Bradstreet and different systems like that to try to get a sense of what is that company as well, what size is it, you know, and are they publicly traded, things like that. Did they provide comments in the form, you know, like you may ask comments. People who provide comments, as long as they're short, are usually much more engaged than people who either don't provide any comments or who have like 500 words, which clearly is they pasted a sales pitch, which happens regularly. Geo origin, where do they come from? Is it India, China, US, Canada? Like, so these things are not worth the same thing. Did they visit the career? So that's like information you get from the form, but also you can have behavioral information, like did they visit our careers page, or did they visit our pricing? You know, which would mean that you know, they're clearly interested. If they're interested in pricing, they're more interested in someone who just is looking for a job. Also, we look if they're already in our database. Basically, it doesn't really matter, but we look at a number of criteria, and that tells us whether the lead looks good, you know, and we make it work with the sales team as well. So they tell us, you know, this is a great lead, this is terrible, so we sort of validate with them. And we've created proxies like that allow us to really quickly turn around and adjust our efforts. You know, earlier we talked about the lead waterfall. This is ours. It could be different for different organizations, but for us, you know, we have a click that can turn into a conversion, which can become what we call a Marketo qualified lead, which can become a sales qualified lead, which can become a sales opportunity with a value, which can be closed then, and which can become recurring revenue, and eventually maybe churned. So from click to conversion, you have the conversion rate. So these are the things you can play with. And in marketing, we have a few of those. From click to conversion, we can play on the conversion rate. We can monitor that. From conversion to Marketo lead, we call that our qualification rate. So it helps us understand, these so-called conversions or so-called leads that we get, are they qualified based on the proxy we built with Marketo? It's an automatic proxy, quick feedback, looks good, doesn't look good. And then, is it accepted by sales? From Marketo to sales qualified lead, the acceptance rate needs to be high as well, right? So the correlation between your qualification rate and the acceptance rate needs to be really high. So you want to make sure that Marketo is as good a proxy to sales qualified lead as possible. So I guess, this is the important part for us as marketers to quickly bring value back into the system, is to either get a system like Marketo or Eloqua or any other, I'm sure I'm not naming all of them, it doesn't really matter, to get a system to score these leads as they come in so we have an idea. And if we don't have these, at least get your sales team to quickly qualify them, right? And then the trick is to go and get that information back out of Salesforce in a consistent manner so that you're able to make adjustments. And that's that's what we did recently. We released our plugin for Salesforce.com, which can also work with other CRM systems. And the idea behind it is to bring, we have a unique ID on every click, and we pass it to Salesforce. So as a conversion happens, it gets tracked back into our system correctly. And as it evolves into your CRM through different cycles, whatever they may be for you, we get that information back into the system, and we're able to make adjustments. So what I'm showing you here is a screenshot of the platform for one of our customers who's been working with this for the past 3 or 4 months or something like that. And I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'll take a shot. So if you look at the top here, you have the conversions, which are just AdWords conversions, for example, and Bing ads and Facebook. Next to it are SF leads. So you can call them whatever you want. So the client called them SF lead qualified, and SF, so they put their sales opportunities and their dollar amounts. So you could put any number of things there. Any data that's in Salesforce can be surfaced. So we're able to see, that the SF lead here for them, this is just deduped. It means that they made sure that they didn't already have it. From that to a qualified lead, they have 3 buckets. So they decided to have qualified lead, maybe, and very poor, like something that they cannot work on. So this is the number of qualified leads according to their system, which they get that information immediately. And then there's other things in Salesforce, but they bring back the sales opportunities as well. So they're able to see a sales opportunity for them means the contract is out the door and they're waiting for a signature. And then the dollar amount that's associated with that on the right. So that means for every ad, keyword, ad group, campaign, we have very accurate representation of their value really quickly, because we can get it that day, so that you can make adjustments rapidly. Finally, I'll make a shameless plug about our BBM system, Quizio's new bid and budget management algorithms that run every 30 minutes. We reallocate budgets across all your campaigns, and we make adjustments to bids in order to steer the campaigns onto their CPA targets as effectively as possible. So BBM controls budgets with unprecedented accuracy. It delivers more conversions and suppresses CPA really well. It's great for agencies so they can control their client spend. Advertisers who want to improve results. Anyway, you can find all the information about this new system on our homepage at Quizio.com, and there are videos there and case studies so you can see how this applies to your specific area of expertise. With that, I think we'll take some. I'd like to thank you, and we'll take some questions.
Absolutely, thanks, Mark. I love the comment on measuring the length of comments. So I think that I would often think it was the other way around. Like a longer comment meant, oh, this person must be really, really interested and have a great question. Unfortunately, more times than not, it's actually the opposite. The issue is that those leads are, or those comments are the sales comments and everything like that. So I found that really interesting. So we do have a few questions that have come in throughout the webinar here. So we'll ask a handful of them. There's always more than we can ever seem to get through by the end of it. So we'll ask a few of them here, and Mark and I will kind of take turns answering them. But we will post the answers along with the webinar slide deck on PPC Hero. So the first questions, I guess, were just kind of directed towards me, which were some clarifications on when I talked about 5 rounds of CRO tests, what does that actually mean? So first CRO is conversion rate optimization. It could also be landing page testing or anything like that, A/B testing. But it basically just means you're trying to improve the user experience on your website to get more of the visitors to the site or landing page to convert. And when I talk about 5 rounds, I'm talking about 5 rounds of A/B testing. So 1 round would be A versus B, control versus experiment. The winner of that would go up against the C variation. So if the A won the original round, it would be A versus the C. And then if the C won, it would be C against D, and on and on. So it's 5 rounds of A/B tests. Hopefully that clarifies it a little bit. So we got a question, and Mark, I think this is good for you because you were talking a little bit about how you guys might use display. So the question is, do you specifically use display to drive B2B leads? And how do you make potentially segment goals or results based on that? So how do you kind of look at it and say leads, not a lead, not a lead? And how do you kind of qualify that on I guess, the front end before it even gets into your marketing system?
We do. I mean, displays is super important for us to drive volume because there's not that many people looking for PPC management software. You know what I mean? Like, we need to generate that demand. So yeah, we're quite active in 2 fronts. We work with remarketing, so retargeting people who we've already seen. We do it with on all of the RTB exchanges, and we also do it on Facebook Exchange. But we also do prospecting, so that's great. But how do you drive volume? Like, it's certainly not with retargeting. So prospecting is the tricky part, and that's where you don't know for sure that people who are clicking your ads are clicking for the right reasons, that they understand the message, because you don't know who your ad really is in front of. You may think you do because you're using behavioral or you're on a specific site, but it's tricky. So measuring results and having a way to have IDs, like when people click, to have some kind of variable that's passed along with the click back into whatever system you use, and so that you're able to track back the results, the real results of every campaign that you're running. That's the challenge, and that's what we try to solve, with the Salesforce connector. Because you can do it without automation, but it's really tedious. I know a lot of people who do it. So they have either spreadsheets, where every day they go into Salesforce, they export the information, map it back into the campaign so they can have some kind of visibility. But in fact, you can't do that every day. It's too time-consuming and error-prone. So they'll do it once a week. They'll pay a lot of attention, make sure they do it well, or even once per month. But that's not that helpful, in terms of day-to-day optimizations. Not ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen similar. So I kind of spoke to using display to generate B2B leads and being really conscious of what happens to brand impressions and things like that. Definitely the more sophisticated you get in your attribution model and your ability to track each click and what happens down funnel is incredibly important. And I would say if you're just going to do blanket display without measuring the kind of halo effect and down funnel effect, it's probably can find some other ways to spend money, because you're going to have a really hard time knowing what worked versus what didn't work. And Mark, we had a specific question. You mentioned with the connector that it works with Salesforce. That's the example you used. But we had a question if it works with Sugar CRM.
It does. We don't have a pre-packaged Sugar CRM connector, but it's the same principle. So we have clients that have Sugar CRM, and so we're able to do it. It's just not as fast, let's say. With the Salesforce, it's instant. With Sugar CRM, it requires a little more configuration because it's an open source system, and people have configured it in many different ways, so we need a little bit more hand-holding through that. But yeah, it works with Sugar as well.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So a question I tend to get, and we received is on bidding on competitor terms, whether it's B2C or B2B, but specifically in B2B. So the question is, do we kind of suggest it, and what kind of results? We specifically, it really depends on a case-by-case basis. So there's certain areas where there's kind of I guess, a handshake agreement that people aren't going to bid on competitor terms, or there's specific reasons why they wouldn't want to. But typically, we've found that competitor terms do perform very, very well. Low click-through rates, but low CPCs and low cost per conversion. And they tend to be, on our experience, a little bit, I guess, more sales ready. They're down funnel. They've done some research. They were looking for some specific options. You're bidding on a competitor, so you may need to do some convincing that maybe now this late in the game that it's worth talking to you about it. But we have seen a lot of success with it. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that, Mark?
No, I think that's probably, I probably share the same thoughts.
Yeah, I think it really depends. I don't think there's a blanket statement of whether you should or you shouldn't. I think you should definitely consider, are other people already engaging in it on your terms, or have they stayed away from you? And then do you have kind of content that's going to explain why you're different and your value prop? So we also got a question on Facebook. So can I generate targeted traffic through Facebook? I talked about that a little bit. I think you can drive incredibly targeted traffic through Facebook, but really mostly by using custom audiences and lookalike audiences like I talked about. So there are a lot of other ways to drive very targeted traffic using all the demo settings they have, like gender and degree level and location, and you can do it by keyword that they're typing in a post and everything like that. But I find that the lookalike and the custom audience is a way to overlay that with a lot of intelligence behind your best clients and what their Facebook profiles look like and what's in common with them. We've found that the Facebook algorithm does a really good job of making that composite. So there is a lot of volume and a lot of very targeted volume that we've found.
I'd say retargeting on Facebook Exchange as well, Jeff, is kind of a no-brainer. Works really well. The CPMs are really low. Click-through rates are a little higher, but at the end of the day, it's typically about as effective as just regular display advertising retargeting. So it's definitely another way to use Facebook to generate a few more leads for B2B.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic point. That it does. It works very, very well. So good catch on my oversight. I definitely should have talked about that a little bit more. So we got probably maybe our last question here. Maybe there'll be time for one more, but we had a question specifically about Acquisio, so I'll let Mark answer it. But it was, what are Acquisio's plans for implementing a scalable way to set up new accounts with call tracking services like Mongoose?
Oh, interesting. You should ask that. Interesting. You should ask that. We're going to make a big announcement. I have all the copy on my deck here on my desk. I don't know. I don't want to make the announcement now, but we're let's put it this way. We've been working really hard at building a platform for resellers. It's kind of accidental. We built a platform for agencies, and we started onboarding sort of Google channel partners and Bing as resellers, the kinds of companies that have like hundreds of accounts, local, small accounts to manage. We've been really successful there, and we realized it, and so we started sort of redesigning some of the stuff we do to accommodate them. And to answer the question, maybe specifically with 2 or 3 vendors, Bionic Click is one of them, Response Tap is another one. Today we're able to have complete accuracy on mapping which specific clicks were responsible for a phone call and at scale. So I'd encourage you to contact me, probably the best person. Otherwise, maybe some of our salespeople don't know about this yet because we didn't tell them. But I have all the information here, and I can definitely help to walk you through it on a one-on-one basis. We'll announce it soon. If it's not a rush, there you can wait maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it'll be out for everyone to use.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think across all PPC channels, B2B, B2C, or whatever it is. Call metrics are very important, but obviously B2B, a lot of it happens over the phone. So I think that's a great question. It sounds like a timely one for you. So that's it for our live Q&A session. So like we said, we'll post all this on PPC Hero, along with there's a handful of other questions that didn't quite get to at this point. But I believe we have one more poll question. I think you still have.
Oh, yeah. We do. Sorry. Let's see here. Here we go. Would you like help with your PPC accounts and management? So the answers are, I'm interested in either A, free solutions blueprint from Hennepin Marketing. We look at your account and provide analysis and consultation for accounts with more than $20,000 in ad spend. Or B, a free 30-day trial of the Acquisio Performance Media Platform. So yeah, we're happy to offer that.
Yeah, I know in the industry, I mean, not to plug you too much, but I know that a 30-day trial is kind of unheard of. As we were evaluating partners, we certainly looked for kind of ways to have low-risk entry points to make sure that we didn't make a mistake. And I believe, I mean, I'm sure there's a few others out there, but you're kind of one of the few ones that lets you kick the tires before making the big long-term commitment.
Yeah. And also, I'd say free sort of review of accounts is, I think a lot of people need that, even us. Every now and then we just realize our account's not quite as good as it should be. So it's good to have another set of eyes looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always amazing, no matter the best ran accounts, the best managed accounts. You almost always can find something, which is part of why I love PPC, but also part of the frustrating thing is that the work is certainly never ever done. So that's I think the end of our webinar for the day. We appreciate everyone joining us. Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm glad I got to co-present this with you. Thanks for making time for it. I know you're a very, very busy person.
Not too busy for this. This is great stuff.
There's some contact information here for people who want to reach out to us. So for feedback on the webinar itself, marketing@hennepinmarketing.com. Would love to hear from you. And if you want to give Acquisio feedback or ask some questions about that connector, it's acquisio-marketing@acquisio.com. So we appreciate everyone for joining us. Mark, thank you again, and we look forward to having everyone else on our next webinar, which will probably be in a week.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.